The first snowflake hit my nose exactly when I realized that Brenda Patterson, president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association, was standing on my front lawn with a clipboard and a scowl that could freeze hell twice over. I was minding my own business on that December afternoon in Boulder, Colorado, building what I considered to be a perfectly reasonable snowman in my front yard. Nothing fancy, just your standard 3-tier design with a carrot nose, coal eyes, and one of my old scarves wrapped around his neck. My name is Nathan Harper, and I had moved into this neighborhood 6 months ago, blissfully unaware of the tyrannical reign that awaited me. "Excuse me," Brenda called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the peaceful sound of falling snow. "Mr. Harper, I need to speak with you about a violation." I turned around, snowball still in hand, genuinely confused. "A violation of what?" She marched closer, her sensible winter boots crunching in the fresh powder. Brenda was in her late 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair that somehow never moved, even in the wind. She wore a puffy white jacket that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and held that clipboard like it was a scepter of absolute authority. Section 8. Subsection 4 of the Maple Grove HOA bylaws clearly states that all lawn decorations must be pre-approved by the board before installation, she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. That snowman is an unapproved decoration. I blinked at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "Are you serious right now? It's a snowman. It'll melt in a week." "That's not the point, Mr. Harper. Rules are rules. If we let you put up whatever you want, then everyone will think they can do the same. Next thing you know, we'll have inflatable Christmas decorations and tacky lawn ornaments everywhere." She wrinkled her nose like she had just smelled something rotten. "It's made of snow," I said slowly, as if explaining to a child. "From the sky. That fell on my property. According to our bylaws, once you shape that snow into a recognizable form for decorative purposes, it becomes a lawn decoration. I'm going to have to issue you a warning and give you 24 hours to remove it." She scribbled something on her clipboard, tore off a yellow copy, and thrust it toward me. I took the paper, still not quite believing this was happening. "You want me to destroy a snowman? I want you to comply with the rules you agreed to when you purchased your home here," she said primly. "Have a nice day, Mr. Harper." She turned on her heel and walked back toward her white Mercedes SUV, which was parked in front of my house with the engine still running. I watched her drive away, the violation notice crumpling slightly in my grip. My neighbor, Tom, poked his head out from his garage next door. He was in his 60s, retired from some tech company, and had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. "Did Brenda just cite you for that snowman?" "Apparently so," I said, walking over to the property line. "Is she always like this?" Tom laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, buddy, you have no idea. Last year she fined the Johnsons $300 because their grass was a 1/4 inch too long. She made the Wangs repaint their shutters because the color was supposedly not on the approved list, even though 4 other houses have the same shade. And don't even get me started on what she did when the Rodriguezes wanted to put up a basketball hoop. That's insane. Can she actually enforce this stuff? Unfortunately, yes. When you bought your house, you signed the HOA agreement. Technically, she has the authority. Most people just comply because fighting it is more trouble than it's worth. Plus, she can fine you, put liens on your property, all sorts of nasty stuff. I looked back at my innocent snowman standing there with his goofy carrot grin. "So I'm supposed to just knock it down?" Tom shrugged. "That's what most people would do. But you've got that look in your eye that says you're not most people." He was right about that. I had spent years working as a project manager for a construction company, dealing with difficult clients, impossible deadlines, and bureaucratic nonsense. I wasn't about to let some power-hungry HOA president boss me around over a snowman. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and actually read through the entire HOA bylaws document. It was 73 pages of the most mind-numbing legal jargon I had ever encountered. But buried in all that text, I found some interesting loopholes. Section 8, subsection 4 did indeed require pre-approval for lawn decorations. However, the definition of lawn decoration specifically mentioned permanent or semi-permanent installations. Temporary decorations were addressed in a different section, Section 12, which dealt with holiday displays. And that section had a very specific clause that exempted traditional seasonal displays from requiring pre-approval, as long as they were in keeping with community standards and not excessive in nature. I smiled as I highlighted that passage. A snowman in winter was about as traditional and seasonal as you could get. The next morning, I woke up to find another notice taped to my front door. Brenda had issued me a fine of $50 for failure to comply with the initial warning. The snowman had now been standing for more than 24 hours. I took a photo of the notice, then went outside and took several photos of my snowman from different angles. Then, I pulled out my phone and started making calls. My first call was to my buddy Jake, who was a paralegal in Denver. "Jake, I need your legal brain for a second. HOA question." "Oh no, you're not having HOA problems already, are you?" he groaned. "Just listen to this and tell me if I'm crazy." I explained the situation and read him the relevant sections of the bylaws. There was a pause, then Jake started laughing. "Dude, you're technically in the right. A snowman is definitely a traditional seasonal display, and it's not permanent since it'll melt. If she tries to enforce this, she's misapplying her own rules." That's what I thought. So if I wanted to, say, build more snowmen, I'd be within my rights. How many more are we talking? I'm thinking 50. Jake's laughter got louder. "Oh man, I would pay to see her face." "Yeah, as long as you're on your own property and they're not blocking anything or causing a safety hazard, you should be fine. Just document everything. Take photos, save all the notices, keep a record of all communications. You're the best, Jake. I'm sending you my hourly rate if this goes to court." Fair enough. My second call was to my sister, Monica, who worked as a social media manager. "Hey, so hypothetically, if someone were to engage in a bit of petty revenge against an unreasonable HOA president, and hypothetically wanted to document it online, what would be the best approach? Oh my God, what are you doing?" But I could hear the excitement in her voice. She loved drama as long as it wasn't hers. I explained the situation and she immediately started brainstorming. "Okay, you need to post this everywhere. Document the whole thing. People eat up HOA horror stories. Make sure you're showing that you're in the right, though. You don't want to come off as the crazy neighbor. What if I built an entire army of snowmen? Even better, make them fun, make them creative. Show that you're doing this with humor, not malice. Well, mostly not malice. I can work with that." By noon, I had a plan. I went to the hardware store and bought supplies. 5 bags of charcoal for eyes and buttons, a bulk pack of carrots, and several cheap scarves and hats from the thrift store. Then I stopped by the costume shop and grabbed some fun accessories, pipe props, tiny brooms, and other odds and ends. The forecast called for another 6 inches of snow that night. Perfect. I spent the afternoon building. I started with a family of snowmen near the first one, varying heights to look like parents and kids. Then I added a snowman that looked like he was waving, another that appeared to be sitting down, and one that was built shorter and rounder to look jolly. Tom came out to watch around 3 in the afternoon. You're actually doing it. I'm just embracing the winter season, I said innocently, adding a top hat to Snowman number 7. Brenda is going to lose her mind. Brenda needs to learn that not everyone is going to roll over when she throws her weight around. By the time the sun set, I had 15 snowmen of various sizes decorating my front yard. I arranged them in a semicircle, like they were having a little snowman party. I gave them different poses and accessories. One had a tiny broom, another had a book made from cardboard, one was holding a sign that said Winter Wonderland, and another had sunglasses and a Hawaiian shirt because I thought it was funny. I posted photos on my personal Facebook page with the caption, "Got told my one snowman was too many." Built 14 friends to keep him company. Embracing the season in Maple Grove. Then I went to bed, genuinely curious about what the morning would bring. What the morning brought was Brenda standing on my doorstep at 7:30, her face so red it clashed with her pink wool coat. "Mr. Harper, this is completely unacceptable," she practically shrieked when I opened the door. "Good morning, Brenda. Can I help you? You know exactly what you did. This is a deliberate violation of multiple HOA regulations. This is excessive, this is a nuisance, and this is absolutely not allowed." I sipped my coffee calmly. "Actually, according to Section 12, Subsection 7 of our bylaws, traditional seasonal displays are permitted without pre-approval. Snowmen are traditional. It's winter. Therefore, seasonal. Don't you dare quote the bylaws at me. I wrote half of them." "Then you should probably know what's in them," I said pleasantly. "I'm not breaking any rules. You're making a mockery of this community. I'm building snowmen, Brenda. With my own hands on my own property, using snow that fell from the sky. I'm not sure how that's making a mockery of anything. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. This won't stand, Mr. Harper." She spun around and marched back to her SUV, which was once again parked directly in front of my house with the engine running. Tom emerged from his house in his bathrobe, coffee in hand. 15 snowmen. Nice. Thanks, I'm going for 50. You're my hero. Over the next 2 days, I continued my project. The weather cooperated beautifully, dumping another 8 inches of fresh powder. I worked during my lunch breaks, before work and after work. I built snowmen doing different things. A snowman reading a newspaper, 2 snowmen that looked like they were shaking hands, a snowman with arms raised in celebration, even a few snow dogs to accompany the snow people. My Facebook post had gotten some attention from friends, but Monica suggested I take it wider. Make a TikTok. Document the whole thing. Show Brenda being unreasonable, show you being perfectly reasonable and just having fun. This kind of content goes viral. I wasn't much for social media, but I figured why not. I created an account and posted a video explaining the situation, showing the violation notices and panning across my growing snowman army. When the HOA says 1 snowman is too many, you build 50, I said in the video. It got 5,000 views in the first hour. By day 3, I had 37 snowmen. My yard was becoming a legitimate winter attraction. Cars were slowing down to look. A few neighbors stopped by to take photos. One family with kids asked if they could take a picture with the snowman, and I said sure, why not? That's when Brenda returned, this time with 2 other board members. I recognized them from the HOA meetings I had attended exactly once before deciding they were a waste of time. There was Gerald, a man in his 70s who seemed to agree with everything Brenda said, and Patricia, a woman in her 50s who at least looked slightly uncomfortable with the whole situation. "Mr. Harper, the board has voted, and we're issuing you a fine of $500 for this flagrant violation of community standards," Brenda announced, thrusting yet another piece of paper at me. "On what grounds specifically?" I asked, pulling out my phone to record the interaction. "You can't record this," Brenda snapped. "Actually, Colorado is a two-party consent state, but this conversation is taking place on my property and in public view, so I absolutely can record it. Now, on what specific grounds are you fining me?" Gerald cleared his throat. "The board has determined that the excessive number of decorations constitutes a nuisance under Section 15, subsection 2. I had read that section. That section deals with noise complaints, noxious odors, and activities that substantially interfere with other residents' peaceful enjoyment of their properties. Snow sculptures are none of those things. They're an eyesore," Brenda said flatly. "That's subjective. And nowhere in the bylaws does it say that subjective aesthetic opinions are grounds for fines." Patricia spoke up quietly. "Mr. Harper, perhaps we could reach a compromise, maybe reduce the number of snowmen to a more reasonable amount. I appreciate the attempt at diplomacy, Patricia, but no. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not breaking any rules, and I'm definitely not paying any fines for engaging in a wholesome winter activity on my own property." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mockery of this association, and I won't tolerate it. You will remove these snow sculptures, or the fines will continue to increase." "Brenda, honest question. Why does this bother you so much? They're snowmen. They'll be gone in a few weeks when the temperature rises. Because we have standards in this community, we have rules for a reason. If everyone just did whatever they wanted, this place would fall apart. Or maybe people would just live their lives without someone breathing down their necks about every little thing," I countered. "You know what? I've changed my mind about the 50 snowmen. I'm going for more." Her jaw dropped. "You wouldn't dare. Watch me." That evening, my TikTok video had gotten over 100,000 views. Comments were pouring in, overwhelmingly supportive. People were sharing their own HOA horror stories. A few lawyers even chimed in, confirming that I was likely in the right legally. The local news picked up the story. A reporter from a Boulder station called me and asked if they could come film the snowmen and interview me. I agreed. The segment aired 2 days later, and it was perfect. They showed my elaborate snowman display, interviewed me about Brenda's demands, and even got comments from other neighbors. Tom gave a great quote about HOA overreach. The reporter had tried to get Brenda's side of the story, but she had refused to comment, which just made her look worse. "Local man creates winter wonderland, HOA says no," was the headline. The story was picked up by other stations in Colorado, then by regional news outlets. My snowman count reached 45. I was so close to my goal of 50. Each one was unique now. I had snow people in different poses, different sizes, different accessories. There was a snow family having a picnic, a snowman that looked like he was playing guitar, even a snowman that was built to look like he was doing yoga. The neighborhood kids loved it. Parents were bringing their children by to see the Snowman Village, as people were starting to call it. I put out a donation jar for the local children's hospital, and by the end of the week, we had collected over $200. But Brenda was not done, not by a long shot. On day 7 of the Snowman project, I came home from work to find a citation notice that the HOA was taking me to arbitration. They were demanding I remove all the snowmen and pay accumulated fines, now totaling $1,200. I called Jake immediately. "They're taking me to arbitration." I saw. "This has been all over social media. My entire office is following your story. Can they win? Honestly, probably not, But arbitration can be tricky. The arbitrator might try to force a compromise. You should get a lawyer. Can you do it? I'm a paralegal, not a lawyer, but my boss might be interested. This is exactly the kind of case she loves. David versus Goliath, clear case of HOA overreach, lots of public interest. Let me ask her. An hour later, I had a lawyer. Her name was Rebecca Chen, and she was a shark in a blazer. We had a consultation over the phone, and she was immediately confident. Mr. Harper, I've dealt with dozens of HOA cases, and this is one of the most clear-cut examples of a board exceeding its authority that I've seen. They're misapplying their own rules, they're issuing fines without proper justification, and frankly, they're making themselves look ridiculous. I'll take your case, and honestly, I think we can turn this around on them. What do you mean? If they push this to arbitration and lose, which they will, you can countersue for harassment and legal fees. HOAs can be held liable when they abuse their authority. I think we have a very strong case. I just wanted to build some snowmen, I said, suddenly tired. I know. And that's exactly why this is so egregious. You're not running a business out of your garage. You're not hosting wild parties. You're not letting your property fall into disrepair. You built some snowmen. The fact that they're reacting this way shows how out of touch they are. The arbitration was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, I completed my goal. Snowman number 50 went up on a Saturday morning, and I positioned him front and center, slightly larger than the others, wearing a tiny crown I had fashioned from cardboard and gold spray paint. The King of Snowmen. I posted a photo with the caption, 50 Snowmen. Thanks for the inspiration, HOA. That post got over 1 million views in 2 days. But I wasn't done. Not quite. Remember when I said Brenda's behavior would escalate? That happened on a Tuesday morning when I was getting ready for work. I heard my doorbell ring insistently, followed by loud knocking. When I opened the door, Brenda was standing there with 2 men in uniform. For a second, I thought she had actually called the cops, but then I realized they were from a private security company. Mr. Harper, these gentlemen are here to ensure compliance with HOA regulations. You have until noon today to remove all snow sculptures from your property, or we will have them removed for you and charge you for the service. The security guards looked uncomfortable. One of them, a younger guy with red hair, actually looked apologetic. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Brenda, on whose authority are you threatening to trespass on my property? The HOA board has authorized this action to resolve a violation that you have refused to address. And do these gentlemen know that I have broken no laws, and that this is an abuse of HOA authority that is currently being addressed through proper arbitration channels? The red-haired guard shifted his weight. Madam, you didn't mention anything about ongoing legal proceedings. That's irrelevant, Brenda snapped. Actually, it's very relevant, I said. If you enter my property without permission to destroy property that is legally there, that's trespassing and vandalism. I will press charges. The other guard, an older man with gray hair, held up his hands. Look, we're not getting in the middle of a legal dispute. Madam, if there's active arbitration, we can't help you. I'm paying you to do a job, not this job, the gray-haired guard said firmly. Sorry, but no. Come on, Derek. The 2 men walked back to their truck and drove away, leaving Brenda sputtering on my doorstep. This isn't over, she hissed. Clearly not. But Brenda, you're making this so much worse for yourself. You're on camera threatening illegal action. You're digging your own grave here. You're the one who's going to pay for this, Mr. Harper. I will make sure of it. She left, and I immediately sent the video to Rebecca. She called me back within minutes. Nathan, this is gold. She just threatened illegal action on camera. This strengthens our case significantly. She's becoming unhinged. Should I be worried? She seems pretty obsessed with this. Document everything. If she does anything else, call the police. Don't engage with her directly. Over the next few days, things got weird. My garbage cans were knocked over one night. I filed a police report and installed a security camera. The camera caught nothing unusual for 2 nights, but on the 3rd night, it caught Brenda herself sneaking into my yard at 2 in the morning and kicking over one of my smaller snowmen. I couldn't believe it. I watched the footage 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But there she was, clear as day in the infrared camera, deliberately destroying my property. I called Rebecca immediately, even though it was early morning. She's on camera vandalizing my snowmen. Send me the footage right now. I did. Then I called the non-emergency police line and filed a report. An officer came out that morning and watched the footage. You want to press charges for vandalism? The officer asked. Is it worth it? It's just a snowman. Sir, it's the principle. And honestly, from what I've heard about this case, this kind of harassment shouldn't be tolerated. It's up to you, but yes, you can press charges. I thought about it. Part of me felt bad. She was just a woman who had let a tiny bit of power go to her head. But then I thought about all the neighbors Tom had mentioned, all the people she had bullied and harassed over the years. Maybe this needed to stop. Yes, I want to press charges. The officer nodded and took my statement. 2 days later, Brenda was charged with criminal mischief and trespassing. The charges were minor, but the embarrassment was significant. The story made local news again. HOA president caught vandalizing snowman on camera was the headline. The next HOA board meeting was apparently explosive. I didn't attend, but Tom did, and he gave me a full report. Several homeowners stood up and demanded Brenda's resignation. Others defended her, saying I had provoked her. The meeting devolved into shouting and ended with no resolution, but 3 board members, including Patricia, quietly approached me over the next week. Patricia came to my door one evening, looking exhausted. Mr. Harper, I want to apologize. When I joined the board, I thought I'd be helping maintain property values and organize community events. Instead, I've spent 2 years watching Brenda bully people. What she did to you was wrong. What she's done to a lot of people was wrong. Several of us are planning to call for a special election to replace the board leadership. I appreciate that, Patricia. Honestly, I don't have anything against the HOA concept. I just think it should be reasonable. Agreed. I'm sorry you had to deal with this. The arbitration hearing arrived on a cold Wednesday morning in January. Some of my snowmen were starting to melt and sag in the occasional warmer temperatures, but most of them were still standing. I had made sure to maintain them, even building a few new ones to replace those that had fallen apart. The hearing was held at a local community center. Rebecca met me outside, looking confident in her dark suit. Ready, as I'll ever be. Brenda was already inside with the other board members and their lawyer, a tired-looking man named Richard, who had apparently been the HOA's attorney for years. Richard looked like he knew this was a losing battle. The arbitrator was a woman named Susan Morris, a retired judge who now handled civil disputes. She reviewed the case materials, then looked up at both parties. Let me see if I understand this correctly. The Homeowners Association issued a violation notice to Mr. Harper for building a snowman. When he built more snowmen, they issued fines. They then attempted to have the snowmen forcibly removed, and Mrs. Patterson was caught on camera vandalizing Mr. Harper's property. Is that accurate, Your Honor? The situation is more nuanced than that, Richard began. The HOA has rules in place to maintain community standards, and Mr. Harper deliberately flouted those rules. By building snowmen, Susan said flatly, by building an excessive number of decorations without approval. Temporary snow sculptures, Susan corrected, made from precipitation. On his own property. Rebecca leaned forward. Your Honor, I'd like to point out that the HOA's own bylaws specifically exempt traditional seasonal displays from requiring pre-approval. Snowmen are objectively traditional winter displays. The HOA has no grounds for these violations or fines. The bylaws also state that displays cannot be excessive or constitute a nuisance, Richard argued. Define excessive in this context, Susan said. Well, 50 snowmen is clearly excessive. Based on what standard? Show me in the bylaws where it specifies a number limit for temporary seasonal decorations. Richard flipped through his papers but came up empty. Susan turned to Brenda. Mrs. Patterson, why did this situation escalate to this degree? Brenda launched into a speech about community standards, property values, and the importance of rules. Susan listened patiently, then held up a hand to stop her. Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed the evidence, including the security footage of you vandalizing Mr. Harper's property. I've also reviewed the HOA bylaws extensively. Here's my ruling. Mr. Harper has not violated any HOA regulations. The snowmen are temporary seasonal displays that fall under the exemption in Section 12. All fines issued against Mr. Harper are void and will be refunded immediately. Your Honor, that's outrageous. Brenda stood up, her chair scraping loudly. Sit down, Mrs. Patterson. I'm not finished. Furthermore, the HOA Board's actions constitute harassment and abuse of authority. Mr. Harper is entitled to recover his legal fees, which the HOA will pay. I'm also recommending that the HOA Board undergo governance training to better understand the limits of their authority. This hearing is concluded. Rebecca and I walked out of that room with our heads high. Brenda stormed out, refusing to look at anyone. That went well, I said once we were outside. Better than well. That was a complete vindication, and Nathan, I think you should consider going further. What do you mean? You could sue for harassment, emotional distress, and the costs associated with this whole ordeal. You'd likely win. It would send a message that this kind of HOA abuse isn't acceptable. I thought about it as we stood in the parking lot, watching Brenda drive away in her white Mercedes. Let me think about it. Over the next week, things happened fast. The story of the arbitration result went viral. News outlets across the country picked it up. I was contacted by morning shows, podcasts, and even a documentary filmmaker who was working on a piece about HOA overreach. The special election Patricia had mentioned moved forward. Brenda tried to rally support, but the vandalism charges and the arbitration loss had destroyed her credibility. The vote was held 3 weeks after the arbitration hearing, and Brenda was removed from the board along with Gerald. Patricia was elected president, and 2 new members who seemed actually reasonable were added to the board. The criminal charges against Brenda were resolved with a plea deal. She paid a fine and was sentenced to community service, but the damage to her reputation was done. As for me, I decided not to pursue additional legal action. I had made my point. The fines were refunded, my legal fees were paid, and the HOA had new leadership that seemed committed to being reasonable. The snowmen eventually melted when spring arrived. But before they did, the community rallied around them in an unexpected way. The Snowman Village became a local attraction. Families came from all over Boulder to see it and take photos. The donation jar for the children's hospital kept filling up. By the time the last snowman melted in late March, we had raised over $3,000. Patricia and the new board actually apologized publicly for how I had been treated. They revised the HOA bylaws to be clearer and more reasonable. removing a lot of the vague language that had allowed for arbitrary enforcement. One warm April evening, I was sitting on my front porch when Tom came over with 2 beers. "Thought you might want one of these," he said, handing me a bottle. "Thanks." We clinked bottles and sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "You know, you did something important," Tom said. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone in this neighborhood. People aren't afraid of the HOA anymore. Patricia actually listens to concerns. We're having reasonable conversations about community improvements instead of being lectured about violations." "I just wanted to build some snowmen," I said with a laugh. "Yeah, but you stood up when a lot of people would have just caved. That matters." The following winter, when the first snow fell, I built exactly one snowman. Just a simple, classic 3-tier design with a carrot nose and coal eyes. I took a photo and posted it online with the caption, "Sometimes one is enough," but the neighbors had other ideas. Within a week, yards all along my street had snowmen. Families built them together. Kids got creative with the designs. The whole neighborhood embraced the winter fun that Brenda had tried so hard to prohibit. Patricia posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, "Loving all the creativity I'm seeing this winter. The HOA fully supports seasonal displays and community fun. Keep being awesome, Maple Grove." It was such a dramatic change from the previous year that I almost couldn't believe it. I ran into Brenda one more time months later at the grocery store. She was alone, pushing a cart down the cereal aisle when we almost collided. She saw me and froze. "Hello, Brenda," I said politely. She looked older somehow, smaller. The confidence and authority that had seemed so unshakable were gone. "Mr. Harper, how are you doing?" She seemed surprised by the question. "I'm fine. I moved, couldn't stay in the neighborhood after everything. I'm sorry it worked out that way. Are you?" There was bitterness in her voice, but not the sharp edge of anger anymore, just sadness. "Actually, yes. I never wanted to ruin your life, Brenda. I just wanted you to leave me alone to build some snowmen." "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said quietly. "Maintaining standards, keeping the neighborhood nice. I thought that's what people wanted. Some structure is good, but there's a line between maintaining standards and controlling people. You cross that line." She nodded slowly. "I know that now, too late, but I know." She pushed her cart past me and disappeared around the corner. I felt an unexpected wave of sympathy for her. She had let power corrupt her, yes, but in the end, she was just a person who had made mistakes. Expensive mistakes with real consequences, but mistakes nonetheless. Life in Maple Grove settled into a pleasant routine. The new HOA board focused on actual community improvement projects instead of nitpicking violations. They organized neighborhood events, negotiated better rates for community services, and handled actual problems like needed repairs to community spaces. I became friendly with several of my neighbors beyond just Tom. We'd have barbecues in the summer, help each other with yard work, and generally act like an actual community instead of a collection of strangers living under the thumb of an authoritarian board. My story continued to circulate online for months. I received messages from people all over the country who were dealing with their own HOA nightmares. Some asked for advice, others just wanted to share their stories. I realized how common this problem was and how many people felt powerless against their own HOAs. I started a blog documenting HOA issues and sharing resources for homeowners dealing with overly restrictive boards. It wasn't something I had planned, but it felt good to help people who were in situations similar to what I had faced. Rebecca even contributed some guest posts about legal rights and remedies. The following December, exactly 1 year after my initial conflict with Brenda, the new HOA board did something unexpected. They declared the first Saturday in December Community Snow Day and encouraged everyone to build snowmen, snow forts, and other snow sculptures. They even organized judges to give out silly prizes for different categories: most creative, funniest, best family creation, and so on. Patricia called me personally to invite me to be one of the judges. "It only seems right," she said. "You're kind of the reason we're doing this." I accepted, and that Saturday turned out to be one of the best days I'd had in Maple Grove. The entire community came out. Families worked together on elaborate creations. There was a snow dragon that spanned 3 yards, a snow replica of the local elementary school, an impressive snow sculpture garden that looked like it belonged in a professional competition. Kids were laughing, parents were getting into the competition, and everyone was having fun. This was what a community should be. I gave out prizes with the other judges, and afterward, we had hot chocolate and cookies in the community center. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "This is all because of you, you know." "This is because people wanted to have fun and the HOA finally let them," I corrected. Same thing. Maybe he was right. Sometimes standing up for something small like the right to build a snowman could lead to bigger changes. Sometimes refusing to back down when someone tried to bully you could inspire others to stand up too. As the evening wound down and families headed home, I walked back to my house through the quiet, snow-covered streets. My yard had a single snowman again, the one I had built that morning. He stood there peacefully, no threat to anyone, no violation of anything, just a snowman. I thought about everything that had happened: the conflict, the stress, the legal battles, the media attention. It had been exhausting and frustrating, but it had also been worth it. Not just for me, but for everyone in the neighborhood who now lived without fear of arbitrary fines and harassment. Change often starts small. Sometimes it starts with something as simple as a snowman. Inside my house, I made myself dinner and settled in for the evening. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Saw the photos from the snow day. Looks like you started a revolution with a carrot and some coal buttons. Just wanted to build some snowmen," I texted back. "Sure, Nathan, keep telling yourself that." I smiled and set my phone down. Maybe I had started a small revolution. Or maybe I had just reminded people that sometimes you have to stand up for the little things because the little things matter. Your right to enjoy your property, to have fun, to not live in fear of someone on a power trip. The snow fell softly outside my window that night, covering everything in a fresh white blanket. Somewhere out there, kids were probably already planning what they'd build tomorrow. Families were enjoying their Saturday evening without worrying about violation notices or fines. And in her new home across town, I hoped Brenda had learned something from what had happened. I hope she understood now that rules without reason are just tyranny in miniature. That authority without wisdom is just bullying with paperwork. As for me, I had learned something too. I had learned that I could stand up for myself. That I didn't have to accept unreasonable treatment just because someone claimed to have authority. That sometimes the most important battles are fought over things that seem trivial to others, but represent something much larger. The right to build a snowman was really about the right to live your life without undue interference, to enjoy your home, to participate in simple, harmless traditions without someone telling you no just because they could. Winter passed into spring again. The snowman melted, the grass grew, and life continued. The blog I had started grew in readership. I heard from more people, helped where I could, and sometimes just listened when people needed to vent about their HOA frustrations. Patricia and the new board continued to do a good job. They weren't perfect, but they were reasonable and they listened. That was really all anyone wanted. On the anniversary of the arbitration hearing, Rebecca called me. "Hey, Nathan, Just wanted to check in and see how things are going. Really well, actually. The neighborhood is great, the HOA is reasonable, and I haven't had to build 50 snowmen to make a point in over a year. She laughed. That's good to hear. You know, your case has become kind of famous in HOA law circles. I use it as an example in presentations about board overreach. Happy to provide a cautionary tale. It's more than that. It's an example of how homeowners can push back effectively when an HOA exceeds its authority. You did everything right. You knew your rights, you documented everything, you didn't back down, and you didn't escalate beyond what was necessary. I had a good lawyer. You were a good client. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks. That case was one of my favorites. After we hung up, I went outside to work in my garden. It was a beautiful spring day, warm and sunny. Tom was outside too, washing his car. Hey, Nathan, you going to the HOA meeting tomorrow night? He called over. Probably. Why? Patricia wants to discuss the summer block party plans. Thought you might want to be on the planning committee. Me. On an HOA committee. Times have changed, my friend. Times have changed. I laughed and agreed to think about it. The idea of voluntarily participating in HOA activities would have seemed insane 18 months ago. But with reasonable people in charge who actually cared about community instead of control, it might actually be worthwhile. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset and reflecting on how much had changed. My quiet life in Boulder had become unexpectedly dramatic for a while, but it had settled back into peace. Better than before, actually, because now I lived in a real community instead of a collection of people afraid of their own HOA board. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had just knocked down that first snowman when Brenda demanded it. Would I have set a precedent of backing down every time she made an unreasonable demand? Would I have spent years paying fines for minor infractions, like so many of my neighbors had before me? I was glad I would never know the answer to those questions. I was glad I had stood my ground, even though it had been stressful and difficult, because standing up had led to real change. The stars came out as night fell, bright and clear in the Colorado sky. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. A car drove by slowly, probably someone coming home from work. Normal sounds of normal life in a normal neighborhood. That was all I had ever wanted. Just to live a normal life, build snowmen when it snowed, and not be hassled by someone on a power trip. And now I had it. I finished my beer and went inside, ready for whatever came next. Because I had learned something important over these past months. When you stand up for yourself, when you refuse to be bullied, when you fight for what's right even in small things, you not only change your own situation but potentially change things for everyone around you. 50 snowmen had been my line in the snow, literally. A silly, stubborn act of resistance that had snowballed into something bigger. And while I had no desire to repeat that particular adventure, I was glad it had happened. Because now, when winter came and the snow fell, everyone in Maple Grove could build as many snowmen as they wanted. And that simple freedom, that small joy, was worth fighting for. That's the story of how I went to war with my HOA over a snowman and won. It's a story about standing up to bullies, knowing your rights and refusing to back down when you're in the right. It's about community, freedom, and the importance of questioning authority when that authority is being abused. But mostly, it's about snowmen, 50 of them to be exact. And the woman who demanded I remove them, only to find out that some battles aren't worth fighting and some people won't be pushed around. Brenda learned that lesson the hard way. I hope it stuck. As for me, I'm just a guy who wanted to build some snowmen and ended up accidentally becoming a symbol of HOA resistance. I never asked for that role, but I'm at peace with how everything turned out. And next winter, when the first snow falls, I'll build another snowman. Maybe just one, maybe more if the mood strikes. But this time, I'll do it knowing that no one will give me grief about it. That I live in a community where reasonable people make reasonable decisions. That's all anyone can really ask for. Freedom, community, and the simple pleasure of building a snowman without starting a war. Though if I'm being honest, the war was kind of worth it too.